In the previous video, we had a discussion about primitive types and also introduced the string class. In this video, I want to start talking about what operators are so you can get a good understanding of what they are and how to use them in your code. For this video, I've created a new project and I've called it operators. So operators are actually special symbols that perform specific operations on 1, 2, or 3 operands and then return a result. Now you've actually seen this in use. We've actually used a number of operators already, but I now want to just go through and clarify and go through all the major operators so you're very familiar with them and know how to use them. Now some operators tend to appear in your code a lot more frequently than others, and if we start typing our code, I'll show you the one that's probably the most common one for you. So we've seen this sort of code before, int result equals something, or we can do something like 1 plus 2. And that is using, there's two operators there, there's an equal and there's also a plus. That's an operator, and it's actually saying whatever is in the right is evaluated on the right hand side here to place that value in result. So in this case 1 plus 2 equals 3, so therefore the value 3 would be assigned via the equal sign to the variable called result. So you've seen something similar in the past when I did something like this. I'll just comment that out with the 2 backslashes as we've seen before. So that's using a literal value there of the number 1 to assign it to result. So that's still using the equals operator, but we're not using the plus operator in that case. So I'm going to go back and put that back to what it was before. So there's our first value is number 3. So that's 2 operators. And just to confirm that, we can just do a print out of that and put 1 plus 2 equals result. And probably not going to be any surprises to see what that comes back as. The answer, of course, should be 3. So you can see there on the right hand side that it is. So continuing on, another operator. What we'll do is we're going to save the result of the previous operation. I'm going to use a function of IntelliJ just out of interest to show you how to clean up if your code starts getting disorganized or there's too many spaces. You can come up here to code and click on reformat code, and that will reformat it all for you nicely. All right, so I'm going to create another variable called previous result. I'm going to assign that to result. So it's going to store the current value of result, and then we're going to assign the result to something else. So we're going to put result equals result take 1. And you've seen something similar to that where we've taken off a value or added it in the past. So that's again using 2 operators. It's using the equal again, but it's also using the minus sign. So it's subtracting. So result equals whatever the current value of result, which at this point in time in the code would be 3 because it was defined up here. Taking 1 from it is 2. So we're saying result equals 2 effectively. We can confirm that. We can put, this time we'll put result equals plus result. So running that again to confirm. Actually what we'll do, just to make it a bit more clearer, we'll put previous result, and then we're going to put minus 1 equals result. So we're just trying to, I need to put a plus there as well. So we're saying now we're going to print out the previous result, take 1 equals result. So it's just really displaying on screen what we're doing in code. So in the first one is 1 plus 2 equals 3. The next line is taking the previous result, which is 3, take 1 equals 2. So that's another operator, the minus. And if we do another one, we'll put, we need to assign previous result again. So previous result equals result. And another one, let's do result equals result times by 10. So the multiplication sign there, and we can do previous result multiplied by 10 equals result. So we'll run that, and that's the multiplication. So we've now got 2 times 10 equals 20. So that's multiplication. We'll save our value again, previous result equals result. And let's do result equals result divided by 5. / is divided by. And again, we can go just start copying this out here. I think it'll be easier than typing it in each time. And we'll just change this. Divided by 5 equals result. Let's run that. So that's now 20 divided by 5 equals 4. So next, let's use another operator. This one's called the remainder operator. So what we want to do with the operation is we want to return what the remainder is using 2 operands. And just to be clear, the operands are these things here. whatever it is to the left or to the right of an operator, that is the operand. So in this particular case up here, the first line we've got two operands, number 1 and the number 2. They're they're the numbers, if you like, or the parameters that we're working on. They're called operands. So let's do something like, or we'll say previous result again. And let's see if we divide the current result by 3. What are we going to be left with? So to do that, we put result equals result. And we use this remainder operator by 3. And what that's saying is return the result of what the remainder is after dividing the result by 3. So we can copy this and have a look. And we should, in theory, have the number 1 from that. So because the current value is 4, so what we're doing here is we're saying, give me the remainder of 4 divided by 3. So it's taking those 2 off. What is the result? What is left over after that operation? So in this case, it should be 1. So let's run that. We can see 4. Give me the remainder of 4 and 3. The answer is 1. Now sometimes you might want to add a value. I'll say the previous result again. Something like result equals result plus 1. And we can just do a result. So if we print that, we run that, no surprises as to what that would be. The result is now 2. But there is a shortcut for that command. If you don't want to type that all out, you can type result plus plus. So the plus plus is saying increment the current result by 1. Just to confirm that, we can actually print that out. Result is now 3, so it's adding 1 to whatever the current result is. You can also use other similar operators which function probably the way you think they should. Result minus minus, which should deduct it. The answer is now 2. So that's 2 examples. The other thing we can do, we can also abbreviate it like so. We can put result plus equals 2. That's saying result, it's equivalent to putting result equals result plus 2. So if we print, just confirm that. Result's now 4, and that's because it was 2 on the previous print. We've added 2 to it, so the answer is 4. We can also do that. Let's see what we expect here. Result multiplied by 10. So the current result is 4. Multiplying 10 by 4 should give us the answer of 40. The answer is now 40. We can also use result minus equal 10. There's an abbreviation for result equals result take 10. And of course the answer should be 30 for that. So the answer is 30. And no surprises for guessing, we can also put a result divided by equals 10. So that will be 30 divided by 10, so we should have the answer 3 if we do that. And you can see we've got the answer 3. So that's a lot of the common operators that you'll be using in your code to perform simple mathematical functions. But what we're going to do now is start looking at a way of expanding this and using other types of operators. So to do that, we need to talk firstly about the if-then statement. And we'll be going into more detail about the if-then statement in future videos. But this is a way to perform some conditional code depending on whether a value is true or false. So the way to do that is we could start off by putting Boolean is alien equals false. It could be a Boolean variable called is alien. We're setting that to false initially. And we can use an if statement to put if, and need to use a bracket, is alien equals false, then print something out, it is not an alien. So notice something there, look at those 2 lines there, and you look at the operators, and you can see that one is a single equals, and on the second line it's 2 equals put together. So the first one, the equals, that is an assignment operator. So we're actually saying set the value of false to the is alien variable. But the second line that's got 2 equals, it does something completely different. It's testing to see whether a particular value is false. So in this line here, what we're saying is if the contents of the variable is alien is false, so the 2 equals means it is false. So in other words, that evaluates to true. So that statement within the brackets is true. So what we're saying is the is alien variable equal to false? So that will evaluate to true in this case because we've set the false variable to false. If it is, we're going to print out an error message saying it is not an alien. And I'll just fix that typo. So now if we run that, we should see that will come back and say it is not an alien on the screen. And you can see it's come up and said it is not an alien. However, if we change our if statement and we change that to true, so now we're checking to see whether the Boolean is alien is set to true. So let's see what happens when we run that. And suddenly we've got no output. So what's happened is the computer has processed this line and that has been evaluated. Is alien is not set to true because on the previous line we set it to false. Because that value in the brackets that is evaluated has been returned as false, the next line of code isn't executed. That's conditional code, so we're only executing that code on the next line if the previous line was true, was evaluated as true. So we're using those sorts of code, that sort of code quite a bit in future videos. So that's the if then. And in a future video, I'm going to go into more detail and show you how you can do multiple tests using an if, and you can put something with that what's called an else statement so that we can evaluate if that condition failed. So in other words, it returned false. But we won't be doing that right now. What I'm doing now is trying to reinforce the 2 equals as opposed to the 1 equals. Okay, we've got some other operators to check here. So let's create another variable. We're going to call it int top score. We're going to say equals 100. So we can put a test here and put if top score equals 100, so the 2 equals, and we can print out you got the high score. So if we run that, at the moment that has been evaluated, it should be evaluated to true because top score is equal to 100. So if we run that, we should see the message, you got the high score. But we can also do something like this. We can use the not equal to operator. That's the exclamation mark and the equal, and that will only be displayed if top score is not equal to 100. So we can run that. And we haven't got a result there. And the reason is because top score equals 100, so that particular conditional check there, that Boolean expression, if you will, evaluated to false, so the next line wasn't executed. So we can also use a greater than operator. So we're testing, is the top score greater than 100? So if we run that, we should find we get no output. And the reason is the top score is equal to 100. So the expression is top score greater than 100 is false because it equals 100. But what we can't do is we can be all inclusive with yet another operator and put greater than equal to 100. So what we're saying there is if the top score is greater than 100 or it's equal to 100, print out the message. So in that case, we should see the message because of course top score is 100. And we've now got the message, you've got the top score. And likewise, we can put the less than sign. That's another operator to check to see whether the top score is less than 100. We shouldn't see the message, but we can put less than equal. And we see the message again because top score is set to 100. And just to confirm that they both work, we can put if top score is less than 100, but let's make the top score 80. So we're doing a test now to see whether top score is less than 100. So we should see that error, we should see that message now because this will evaluate to true because of course top score is less than 100. So we run that. You got the high score. So moving on, let's try another one. We'll put int second top score equals 60. What we can do, we can put something like this. We can put if top score is greater than second top score and top score is less than 100, print a message greater than top score and less than 100. So looking at that code, this is actually performing 2 tests here. It's saying if the top score is greater than the second top score, and we're also saying but also we want to check whether the top score is less than 100. So in this case, we should find the message will be printed because top score, firstly, is greater than second top score. Second top score is 60, but we've assigned 80 to top score. But we're also putting a test and if the top score is less than 100 and top score is set to 80. So if we run that, we got greater than top score and less than 100. Well, I actually should have said greater than second top score. So we run that again. Greater than second top score and less than 100. So that both of those conditions have to be true for that code to work. And just to confirm that, if we made the top score 81, we should find now that this won't show the message because now the top score is not greater than second top score. And you can see that it hasn't been evaluated. So that's using the ampersand. So this video is getting a bit long, so I'm going to stop the video here, but we'll continue on with operators in the next video. In the previous video, we had a discussion about primitive types and also introduced the string class. In this video, I want to start talking about what operators are so you can get a good understanding of what they are and how to use them in your code. For this video, I've created a new project and I've called it operators. So operators are actually special symbols that perform specific operations on 1, 2, or 3 operands and then return a result. Now you've actually seen this in use. We've actually used a number of operators already, but I now want to just go through and clarify and go through all the major operators so you're very familiar with them and know how to use them. Now some operators tend to appear in your code a lot more frequently than others, and if we start typing our code, I'll show you the one that's probably the most common one for you. So we've seen this sort of code before: int result equals something, or we can do something like 1